Hey, Greg.
Hey,
How's it going?
it's going good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, happy to be here. Glad it worked out. Thanks
Yeah.
for thank you.
You've been on our show before. Earlier, like we started this about a year ago, and my wife interviewed you.
Okay.
I couldn't. Yeah, I wasn't able to do it, so I'm really stoked. I can talk to you this time around.
Help
So
me out a little bit. Where did I talk to her, or was it on the
it was
phone?
it was over like a FaceTime like this. You were with
Okay.
your kids. It was right when you guys were doing the book last
Oh,
year and the 30th anniversary tour.
okay.
We tried
Cool.
to we tried to meet you guys when you were here in San Diego on the
Okay.
tour, but it didn't really work out. So we were
Yes.
able to do something with you over like a
Got it. Yes, I think I
FaceTime
remember.
type thing. Yeah. Cool, Greg. Well, thank you again so much for doing this. Our podcast is about your journey in music and how you guys
Hmm.
got to where you are now. And you've told your story a bit before to us, but maybe we
Hmm.
could talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, the new record, the
Yeah.
reimagined versions of the songs coming out with
Yeah.
the volume 2. Cool.
Happy to be here and chat, man. I like it. I like chatting.
Awesome. So you originally from New Jersey, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, I'm still in my high school band,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, I mean, we started, 16, 17. I mean, we knew each other because we grew up in the same town before all that too, but we started playing covers and stuff probably around, somewhere around 15 to 16, 17.
Okay. What when did you get into music? Like what was the first instrument you learned?
Um, well, there's a piano in my house and my mother played, and she tried to give me some lessons, but I was more interested in running around playing soccer and stuff. So I think music was always kind of around. And,
Hmm.
my parents weren't seriously into music, but, you know, my dad would sing like On the Road Again by Willie Nelson and stuff, like
Okay.
that kind of stuff. And I'd say it wasn't until, I started buying my own records around like 12 or 13, and it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I was buying like Bruce Springsteen records and and, and whatever was popular. I
Hmm.
had my parents' records like Elton John and that kind of stuff. And then my sister was my first introduction into like more alternative stuff in the 80s. Like her friends would like listen to the Smiths
Oh, cool.
and like Husker Du, and she had this like cool gang of friends that were like kind of like the alternative sort of post punkers, like actually a super cool art gang of like artists and stuff that was like a year older than me.
Hmm.
And so that was my first foray into like music that was like back then it was like really hard to find that music. And so it was a big deal to sort of, you had to get on a train and go to a record store that was like far away. And then you
Hmm.
had like, you could buy like two records, and then you had your little record collection of like, that was very special. So it was, of course, a different time and place that to be exposed to that kind of stuff. I think back now and I have a lot of gratitude for where I grew up. And as opposed to when I started traveling around the world and seeing how much I was exposed to by growing up in New Jersey and really close to New York City, where there was a really cool active music scene
Hmm.
and a very diverse music scene.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm going into a lot of detail.
Oh no, I love it.
Okay.
Well, you talked about yeah, your you said your sister and her friends kind of got you into
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just sort of like by osmosis, it wasn't
right.
like, I wasn't like, okay, it was just happening. Like in her room, she had mixtapes and I would look at them or check them out, and then that was how I slowly started being like, oh, what's Husker Du? Like a mixtape
Sure.
that one of her friends made, and then I listened to it, and I was like, that was my first exposure, and like the Replacements, and then a year or two in after that, is when I sort of connected with Pete and Bryan, who were
Okay.
also in on their journeys of music exposure, and both of them played instruments. So Pete was he'd been playing guitar probably for 5 years by that point. So I would go over to Pete's house and he'd be like playing along with Zeppelin records and stuff. And kind of like, that was like next level. Like I hadn't really
Sure.
like been around someone like who would sit there and play through a record.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always really cool, like to sort of like see, he was a friend, he was a bud. I was like, wow, he can play guitar and he's like playing along to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. Like, and we really bonded, and that's where it sort of like steamrolled when we all started hanging out, getting into everything. Like, and Bryan as well, he introduced like more of the hardcore stuff into my world, like Minor Threat and
Okay.
the New York City hardcore stuff, like Agnostic Front. And I knew my sister was into the Ramones and stuff, so I knew the Ramones, and I knew and all the more like popular stuff at that time, which also we were also into, like U2. All of us loved U2. We like waited, slept outside in the parking lot for tickets to see U2 at Giant Stadium, like
really?
like a year or two later. Yeah, full
That's
on.
cool.
Like,
isn't that bizarre that that's not even a thing anymore? Like, you can't
dude,
go wait for tickets. It's like,
no,
you've
no,
got to be the
no.
fastest internet searcher.
Yeah. So again, it's like it was a different universe, for better, for worse. A lot of things were a lot. There was definitely some more charm in there to spending, the night, sneaking some beer out there and drinking it in the parking lot. And
Sure.
but also I don't mind trying to click as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's nice to be doing it from the comfort of your own home, huh? Instead of
Yeah.
like freezing in a parking lot overnight.
Exactly. So we evolved. The next level was like those guys played in a cover band, and I was like hanging around and just like enjoying it. And then at one point, like I started picking up a microphone, because essentially they were like a cover band, a party band, and I would hang out and everyone would hang out and just play covers, like U2 covers and Billy Idol covers and Ramones covers, like punk tinged cover band, but also like classic rock.
Sure. Mainstream.
And yeah, and that's the core of what the Bouncing Souls is, actually. It's like we came from a place that's like a party band, like sort of, like that's where we still live. It never changed, and I mean that in a way of like an inclusive way, that we want people to engage, and we always wanted to play songs that people would sing along to. It's always been about that. I think there's one thing that stayed the same. It's that from those very first days.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you picked up a mic for the first time, like around that time, going to these, were they practices or were they actually playing shows and stuff when they would do
it was a little bit of both. Like it was like, all right, Friday night, let's go jam. Like that was so essentially, like it would be like if there's nothing to do, Bryan, the drummer, lived across the street from Bryan, and Pete would come over and we would just call our friends, and everyone would just come over and sit around and like drink beer and smoke cigarettes when we smoked cigarettes. And so that was just like the default, like as opposed to just hanging around drinking beer. Like
you were
those guys would be
drinking
playing
beer,
songs,
music.
Yeah. And then so it was very chill. And then if anybody wanted to sing in the microphone to some song, like Pink Floyd song or something, like they would get up and sing, like,
yeah.
So it was very chill. Like not a lot of people did that. And then occasionally someone would throw a party in town, and they would bring their gear over and play in the basement, and it would be like sort of a party, like a high school style party. And then it would even evolve to like somebody's older brother went to college in Pennsylvania, and like that was like a big deal, like driving out to some college party, and there'd be like college girls there.
Oh, sure.
And like endless beer. It was ridiculous. So that was the next level of actually, that idea. Once you're playing in your room, and then you carry your amplifiers and your guitars and put them in a vehicle, and then drive somewhere and set that up somewhere else and then play to people. That is a transformative experience. It seems small, but when in those early days, like you learn so much, and you understand what like that is, being a musician on the most basic level. And if someone's paying you, you're like, all right, well, we're getting paid. So like, you need to like sort of show up for that. Right.
Yeah.
And so all that was happening back then. And I remember the exact moment. I think I've picked up the microphone, and I sang I Can't Explain by The Who, which is like, still love the song.
Oh
Great
yeah.
classic tune, easy to sing along to. And I remember it because the whole experience kind of catapulted me on to some place I had never been to, you know.
Okay.
I was there with the mic singing along, and then like something happened to me, which now I understand in retrospect, you know, I was hardwired for this. And it like the first experience, just like a light went on, you know, to use the cliche, but
Sure.
I was just like, whoa, like, I don't even know what happened to me. All I knew was I was like energized by it. And especially being a pretty shy, introverted kid.
Yeah.
Like, and so that was a big deal to step up and do that. And then see that I had sort of probably the glimmer of this exact opposite side of my introverted self, which existed in me and I'd never seen before. Like the classic, you know, in many cases, the lead singer of a band is usually an introvert who gets extremely extroverted and gets that out of his system on a stage with a microphone, being loud and getting all the attention. Like,
yeah.
And then, so it's sort of the right personality. That's why introverts, you find like in, you know, whenever you hear the stories and personalities of like lead singers and
Yeah, a lot of people are a lot of introverts.
yeah,
It's like you can get out there, get all of it out in,
yeah.
you know, an hour. And now it's okay, I'm going to go back and
Now I need 20 hours to myself.
be away from everybody. Sure. So that was the moment, like singing the Who cover. It kind of was just like, wow, this is what I need to be doing.
I wasn't even that conscious of it, but that happened. That did happen, and I wanted to keep doing it. But it wasn't like this sort of like career plan kicked in. It was just sort of like, I was like, yeah, I'll do that again. Like, what others? And they literally felt it too. I think to some level, they're like, what other songs do you know, Greg? You know, like,
yeah.
And then that was like, I don't know. What do you guys know? It was very organic in that way. And then I was like, yeah, I want to keep doing this. You know, like, let's try again. I'll try to learn this song. And they're like, cool. Yeah, nobody wants to. If you want to sing, great. Nobody else wants to sing.
I was gonna say,
so,
it's interesting that like you said, anyone can get up. You know, in the beginning, you guys are hanging out. Anyone can get up and sing. But then, like, you get up in there, and obviously, you can sing really well. Like, did you know that you could sing? Like,
I wouldn't say I could sing well. That actually came way later. I think what everyone clicked with was my enthusiastic energy. Like I had some energy clicked in. There was some chemistry happening there that everyone sensed. But it was kind of the opposite. Like I could hold a tune, but when it started the next level, when it started to come around to like writing original music, that was a mess, man. It was not. It was a slow process of like doing stuff that didn't make sense, and we all butted heads a lot. Like it took years, you know, for anyone out there that's like thinks it was an easy process or it came easy, that we were suddenly like, oh, we're writing like True Believers.
Right.
We're fantastic. Like we didn't write True Believers from that moment. It was, you know, just to do the math, you know, like that was, we're talking about 89 and
True Believers.
True Believers, like
that was like the early
11,
2000s,
12
right?
years later, you know, like, so that's to give you a rough idea.
Yeah. Well, so okay. So from that cover band, did that just eventually become the Bouncing Souls?
Well, the drummer changed out. He had different plans. He went away to school, and then Shots When Shao sort of came into the picture. And also like Shao had played with Pete when they were like 13 years old. Like they played like Def Leppard in Shao's garage. Like, so it was like definitely all knew each other from living in the same town. So, but Shao came into the picture and was more interested in like pursuing the band, you know, on the next level of not just playing covers and writing original songs and stuff like that. Yeah.
So then you guys started, and talk to me about like you started your own label kind of early on, right? And
Yeah,
then
well,
eventually you guys get signed to Epitaph. So it's like,
yeah, doing like the quick sum up. Exactly. So we were a pretty big local band, and then we realized we had to put out our own music because no one else was going to do it, and that was also another difficult process, and had to take more responsibility and
Mhm.
all that stuff instead of having stuff people do stuff for you. And so we took that route, and then one baby step at a time, which I think has also helped us grow as people, so that we could understand and be mature, even though I don't like that word, but like we could understand what the responsibilities were that we had to take to make it be a band that functioned, be
Mhm.
responsible for ourselves and respect each other and respect what the opportunities we had, because we did have a lot of good opportunities, so we didn't squander them when they came,
Mhm.
instead of like crapping on the opportunities you have, not understanding. So yeah, we had got BYO manufactured and distributed our first release. After we put a 7-inch out, they scooped it up, and we did a full length, and then we did a second one with them, and then that's when Epitaph came along.
Okay.
And by then we were really on the train of like being a band for a living, which was
Mhm.
also another huge growing period where we had to figure that out. Like
Yeah.
we
Do you
weren't just
remember
like,
that moment that you could kind of be like,
well,
you know what, we don't have to really work anymore?
I mean, I don't think there was a specific moment. The goal was to be like, this would be great to do this for a living,
Mhm.
and um, I think, you know, there wasn't any specific moment, because for a while we would come off of tours and work, temporary kind of jobs. Like
Mhm.
we had different kind of opportunities like that we could work for a few weeks here and there. So that happened like through the 90s. I think we did that through a better part of the 90s, but maybe somewhere around 96 or 97, maybe we stopped doing that and just kept touring for like
Okay.
essentially for probably like 12 years, like 9-10 months out of the year. We probably just were like on tour
On
for
tour.
10 years essentially. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think about it now and I'm like, I could never do that right now. He likes the young man's game.
Yeah.
Um, but we were driven and we worked super hard and we had a lot of fun, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it wasn't easy.
Sure. I mean, was that a pretty big moment going from, yeah, I mean, getting signed to Epitaph? Because that
Mm.
was pretty early on in Epitaph's career, right? I mean, as far as,
Yeah, we signed like at the at their peak of their as the rising peak of their popularity,
yeah.
when they were scooping up tons of bands. So it was like, you know, that's another story. The story of Epitaph, they just kind of blowed it up really fast after the Offspring, and
Hmm.
and then luckily we were able to stick. It worked out well for us and for them. It was a good relationship. I think we did well, and that was also our ticket to Europe, because they had distribution in Europe, and thanks to Epitaph and the distribution in Europe, we were able to go on tour there, and people were able to buy our records and CDs, and we were to sort of develop the fan base we have there, which I'm very grateful for, because it's been amazing to tour and travel there and
Hmm.
make friends there. And those kind of things were a dream come true for me, to just sort of see the world and share music in other parts of the world. Is always just like a really special thing.
Yeah. Do you remember like going out to, must tell me about, like, you go out to Europe for the first time. You're signed to Epitaph. Now you can tour
Yeah.
other across the world or whatever, and then you're
Yeah.
you're at these towns that you've never been to, and then there's
Hmm.
people there to see your band, and they know the
Yeah.
songs and they know the words.
Yeah.
Like, was that a pretty surreal experience?
It's incredible. Like you almost can't even grasp it. Also,
Yeah.
to put in perspective, we've been at it for over 10 years. So we have paid our dues.
Sure.
And that's why I say, like, we did have a very flash in the pan opportunity to go to Europe in 1992 when I was 21, 22. And I'm
Mhm.
glad it didn't happen.
Oh, you guys
Um,
didn't do it.
yeah, we weren't able to. It didn't. It fell through.
Okay.
Um, but the first time we ended up going was in '96. So we had learned a ton in that 4 or
Hmm.
5
4
years,
years, yeah.
and I was able to appreciate it. And So that was the first time. And then, yes, the first time's always was amazing, but then coming back a second or third time where people actually saw you, it was like
Sure.
two guys that like, yeah, we saw you in Munich. It was very good. And you're like, what? Oh my God. And you're like, yeah, that's incredible. Like there's something that you can't even explain really, because it comes from a place, an emotional place of wanting to express yourself as an artist or a musician and connect with people and sort of, connect on this human experience that we are all having. And that's what music is, it's like, it connects us in a way that's sort of hard to put into words. So when you're doing that with someone who barely speak the same language, it's pretty powerful. It's a great thing. And yeah, so I think those moments were pretty incredible, and they always are. Like that doesn't go away as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think I need to add that. It's sometimes you lose your perspective, but then you always get it back when people explain to you how your music has played a part in their life, because it's been the same thing for me as well. With music.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And then now, 30 years later, you guys are still at it.
Yeah.
And you have you released a new song, but then reimagined or reworked versions of old tracks. That's what
Yes.
the volume 2 is going to be.
Yes. So I'll just run through that real quick. So
yeah, I want to hear about it.
2019 was our 30-year anniversary. We did an EP with our good friend Will Yip, who did an amazing job, 6 songs. And then we did a book, which sort of just a visual history with like some quotes from friends and fans. And throughout, we toured the whole year. It was one of the best years of touring we ever had. And we were doing these acoustic shows sort of as a pre-show. We would do 5 or 6 songs right after sound check, and it was an extra like bump on a ticket if you wanted to come.
Oh
see
yeah,
the
like the
show.
VIP stuff. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And it was a ton of fun. So we were doing it, and we were just kind of winging it. We were playing songs acoustically. We were not much for like practicing or getting all serious about that stuff. So we would just sit down and kind of like, what should we play? And then so we started developing it by necessity, because we needed to do these things. And after the shows, people were like, wow, that's great. Are you guys going to do an acoustic record? And we were like, maybe we should think about doing an acoustic record, and so that was the idea. So we're like, all right, 6 months in, we're like thinking about it now as an acoustic record. We're playing and we're like making a list maybe of songs we might do and how we would do it. Would we record it live? Maybe like record one of these things or two and then put that out. And so we're just hashing it around. And then we finally made that leap to get Will on board and ask Will if he would do this like sort of acoustic record. And that was it. So we booked the time, which was in February of 2020.
Oh, without knowing COVID was going to happen or anything?
Right,
obviously.
Of course. So here we are. We're outside Philly. I travel with my wife and my 2-year-old to my dad's in Jersey. And so they're just going to stay. We're going to be there record for a week. Then we have a few days off, and I was going to hang out with my family and then record for another week, and then we're done. Mm-hmm. So that first week, it was all, the news was coming up like, oh, there's this, Italy's got this thing. It's from China's got this thing. It was all just sort of like, it wasn't real yet. Right. Mm-hmm. And then it started leaking, and it was all bumping up in New York. And then that halfway point where we did record for the first week, it wasn't really serious yet, but then it really, that midpoint, when we're in Jersey with like 2 or 3 days off before the next week, that's when it started to really ramp up. We're like, is this going to get real? Mm-hmm. We got to finish this recording. So by that last day, they had closed the restaurant upstairs from the studio. They roped off the park down the street. I took Shanti, my wife, and my son for a walk to the park, and the cops were there putting up a fence. And we're like, oh this is freaking for real. Yeah. Of course, everyone had a similar sort of experience at that time. We're like, but it was intense because we were, I live in Idaho. So it was like, what's this going to mean? The airport's going to close, like for who
Yeah.
knows how long. Like my dad lives by himself. He's, immune deficient. We got to like keep him in, like, he's just like, what do you mean I can't go to the market? He was just
Yeah.
kind of like, we don't know anything about this. And he was just a little bit like that about it.
Sure. Sure.
Like everybody was.
Yeah.
So
Nobody
yeah,
knew what the heck was going on.
yeah, the unknown created a it was like a mass pile of human anxiety, right? All at the same time, right? So we were just like, damn, we're getting under this thing under the gun. We just literally finished the tracking, and then it was full lockdown on the East Coast.
Oh my
And
God.
we were like, later, dudes, I don't know when I'm gonna see you guys again. Who knows how bad this thing's gonna be? Like I said goodbye to Will, said goodbye to the band guys the last day. And then we like stocked my dad up with stuff.
Sure.
And then my flight wasn't for 2 days. And I hadn't felt this kind of anxiety in years. Like I woke up the next morning. We weren't flying to the next day. And I was like exhausted only because I would realize my anxiety, like I just couldn't even stay awake. I was just like, because the anxiety was just crushing me. So we flew out, and of course that was totally weird. Like Newark Airport, nobody's there, but all
So
the
crazy.
employees are there, everyone working there, but there's 20 people flying.
Yeah. No passengers.
Yeah, so that was completely freaky. And then I live 100 miles north of Boise, and we fly into Boise late, so we're like, okay, let's stay in a hotel, and Boise is completely normal. I'm just like,
really?
yeah, because
nothing's going on.
It hadn't really, it really was sort of concentrated at that point. Still, it was only on the East Coast, but I felt like that guy that was like, you don't know what's coming. It's like the zombie apocalypse. I was just like, it was completely, everyone's like business as usual.
Right.
And like, I walk into the hotel and I'm like, dude, I just came from New Jersey. I feel really weird right now. Like I might be the guy who carries this thing.
Yeah, you have
infects all of Idaho.
Right.
I just felt so weird. Because it was that moment in time where like that was what was happening, like I was aware, like the stuff, there's like 1 or 2 people that get on a flight from one place to another place, and then they're just passing it around. So he's like, okay, I got some hand sanitizer. Don't worry about it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But it was weird. It was weird. I think it's just weird for all of us. And it's still weird, but we're getting used to it. I know. So that's weird.
That's really weird. Yeah, no, seeing people walking around outside with masks on now, it's just kind of like, oh, whereas a month and a half, 2 months ago, it'd have been like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, the awkwardness now that it's not awkward anymore is a little alarming to me that I'm personally just not, I'm the awkwardness. Where did it go? It's like, I just don't feel awkward anymore because we're all adapting. Because that's what we do. We're humans. We just adapt, and we're like, all right, this is what it's like. This is what we do.
This is now new normal. Go. Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's strange. And again, getting back to the record, after all that, I'm glad we were very fortunate. We got our 30-year anniversary tour in. We got this recording in, and now we can't tour. We can't travel. Really play live, like full on tour. We can't do. We can put out our record. And yes, we got into the studio, getting away from the whole pandemic story. We got into his studio, and Will essentially was like, come on guys, are we really going to just make an acoustic record here? We're going to get some electric guitars in this thing, right? And we're like, yeah, Will, you're right. We're not sure. There's no rules, Yeah. And so that was kind of the vibe. And we really literally I don't think we looked at the list of songs for like a week. We were just like, we would walk in and be like, hey, what did we like? Kids and Heroes, that worked pretty good. Let's play Kids and Heroes, So we would sit down and start playing Kids and Heroes and come up with some different rhythms to it and a little bit instrumentation different, and tempos were a little different. And then Will was sort of like our guide to be, because we know the song so well. It's hard to see them in a different way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a blast. And that's why it was like this creative, spontaneous experience. And as simultaneously, like the world was coming in this vice, you know,
Sure.
especially that second week, we were like, the world is such a horrible, scary place. We don't ever want to leave our little bubble of fun, like writing songs. Like we were having such a good time because it wasn't like, you know, when you write new songs and you record them, it's stressful. You know, you're like, there's
Mm-hmm.
lots of choices and you don't know, they're not time tested, you know? So you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, I think this is good. This feels right. But that whole part of it was total joy. It was like, I was able to sing like Gone. I've been singing Gone for 20 some years
Yeah.
live. I've gotten way better at it when I tracked it. I know the ins and outs. I know what I can do. I know what I can't do. It's a part of my body now. I can just like belt it out. And now I can get this recorded. And that was satisfying. Maybe one of the most satisfying experiences I've had as a singer. Cause I can like, now I can like be at my best.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of our records are just sort of a snapshot, you know, in some cases, you know, like when you look back at some snapshots of yourself, you're like, you know, I did some cool stuff, but man, my hair looked really bad.
Yeah.
Like, what was I thinking
What was I
there? You
thinking?
know,
Right. Sure.
you're like, but you know, of course, you know, you got to walk that walk. And now that's why, but it's on a record and, you know, and then a lot of people like the record and it is that snapshot. That bad haircut got me to the next good haircut.
Right.
But now for me, I was like able to be my best self. So that was really, really satisfying. And
Mhm.
I think same with the rest of the band, you know, we were all able to like put that into it.
With like, I mean, 30 years of material, you guys have 10 studio albums plus all the EPs and
Yeah.
everything that you guys have done. How did you narrow down the track listing of these songs?
Well, that's sort of how the volume 2 concept came as sort of a joke, which in the Bouncing Souls world, things start off as a joke and then it actually becomes a thing.
Okay, because I was wondering about that too. Because Volume 1 essentially wasn't that just like the best of 30 anniversary record or no?
No, there is no volume 1.
Okay. I thought there wasn't a Volume 1, but when you
No.
Google Volume 1, it brings up the information for the 30th anniversary record you guys did.
How that makes sense, not sure.
Don't either. I don't either.
But here's how it essentially played out.
Okay.
The whole time as the gears were going and we were starting to do this, we said the same thing. We're like, wow, this is really fun. We're getting really making these, some of our songs, we're not, in our opinion, we were sort of revealing what was good about these songs, like the melodies and the lyrics that you just might not necessarily hear in some of the more loud, fast songs. So we're like, we could definitely do another record of this. We could do 2 records. We could do like a double album or like volume 2. And then it was like, man, volume 2, volume 1, volume 2. And then I think it was Pete that was like, why don't we just call it volume 2? And it's because they're sort of chill. It's not like the volume's not on 9 or 10, it's on 2. And that's why it's on the cover, like the back cover has a little volume knob. It's on 2. So
that's interesting. I've only seen the front where it's like the guitar.
yes.
Okay.
So that was the whole arc of our conversation. And it's like, once again, like you get this title and you're like, that's stupid. Maybe we can probably beat that title, but then you never beat it. And you're like,
Right.
all right, it's Bouncing Souls Volume 2. Like, why not?
That's
and
funny.
then I was like, maybe we should do volume 1 after volume 2. And then Will was like, that would just be mean. That'd just be mean to everybody.
People would be so confused. Well, you got one new one on there too. World
Yes.
on Fire.
Yes. So that literally, as you know, was written maybe the third. There was 2-3 days left, and we had another song kind of on the ballot. It was already gonna be tracked, like another new song. Until Pete was just like, dude, I'm so stressed about all the stuff that's going on with the like pandemic and the quarantine stuff that's looming. He literally came in with some lyrics and like a couple of chords, and we were like, okay, let's do this. And we sat down, and in 2 hours we had written that song. And then we had the demo, and Will was right there. He's like, okay, let's arrange it, demo it out. And then that was it. We had, in 2 hours, we had written that. And then we're like, this is perfect. This is so cool. It will be, it's telling our story of the moment, which made it really special to us, because it was like, here's all these songs from the past. They're telling all this bits of our past and telling a story. So cool that we can have something about as about the moment as you possibly can get, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Even though it wasn't released, it's still, now it's October. It's almost, because we get stuff so quickly these days. It's about how we felt in March.
Right. It's crazy.
October is a little different.
Yeah.
But, at least it's still valid in that to some extent. But I feel different about it already, but it's still valid,
Yeah. And with the track listing and putting the songs together, were you guys trying to sort of tell a story of the career, or was it just kind of random song choice?
Yeah, I think once you get the songs and then you start mixing, you start listening, that's when you start like sketching out how it will listen. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I don't know. You always do. It's like painting a picture. You're like, well, you don't want to put this thing here, the more rockin' one here. You don't want to put all the rockin' ones together. You don't want to put all the super chill ones all together. And then they start to command their own spots. You're like, okay, well you don't want that at the beginning. So like you put in, then it's like Ghost on the Boardwalk doesn't go in the first song. It's got to go towards the end. So you're throwing it down at the end, and then everybody else starts finding their spots.
Okay.
That's how you let it dictate itself,
Sure. Well, amazing. I can't wait to check out the full thing, because it's coming out in a weekend or so, a little over a week, right? 23rd. Very cool. Thank you so much, Greg, for talking with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. I do have one more question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Well, it's just all the cliches that everyone always usually says, like you really are, as an artist, you're carving your own path, so all the other artists and musicians and friends and family can do is be like, give you support, but really only your own, the choices that you make, you have to make them for yourself and figure that out, what's right for you, whether it's creatively or, if you're at that next level where you're making choices business-wise and all that stuff. So if you can practice and learn to trust yourself and know what you care about, making a list and knowing what it's important to you will probably be the best thing for you.
I love it. Thank you.
And that's and that's of course a process,
Sure.
We're figuring out every day. I think everyone is, but and then I also say, like, everyone's an artist. If you're a human being, you're an artist, because you're creating your life. You know what I mean? You might not sing songs, you might not, paint pictures, but every damn day we're waking up and we're talking to each other and you're figuring it out and we're like creating. So if you see the world in that way, everyone has to be an artist. You have to be. Bringing it backward.